it's really all about the business systems. And, when people ask me about franchising their own business, the first thing I tell them is, what you want to do in your business is begin today to document everything you do.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interview. Hi and welcome to the My Future Business Show. My name is Rick Nuske, and today I've got a brand new topic that we've not discussed much at all. It's all about franchising. And now I'm sitting here with Mariel Miller. How are you, Mariel?
I'm great, thanks.
Thank you for coming on the show today, and we're going to explore a whole host of different touch points in relation to franchising. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mariel.
So, well, I'm working here I'm in the States. I'm actually in New Jersey. I've been in franchising for 20 some odd years, about 27 years or so, and did a whole lot of held different positions in franchise companies, did some consulting, worked with emerging brands. I've seen a lot, I've seen a lot out there. And today, what I do is I work with individuals who are curious about franchising, and they want to improve their net worth and improve the quality of their life. And business ownership could, be a way to do that. So we do a lot of education and coaching, and we help people explore and learn the difference between well-run brands and brands that might be having problems out there, and what's trending and what's happening. So it's very rewarding and very fun.
Sounds very exciting. I wonder, I'd love to talk about the history of franchising, because at the end of the day, My Future Business focuses on helping up-and-coming entrepreneurs who are either in business or looking to start a new business. So this is like hand in glove, this particular call today. Can you tell us about how it all started, the whole franchising industry?
Oh, wow. What a great question that is. And I'm certainly not a historian, and there's lots of... there are lots of different, answers to that. Some people say it's McDonald's, which of course it isn't. But it started, some people say it was Singer sewing machines.
Oh, wow.
That was the very first business to franchise in the 1900s. But really, it really began to flourish after the 50s and 60s, when the whole McDonald's thing really happened. And if anyone saw that movie, it's such a good movie called I think it's The Founder.
Yes.
It's the Ray Kroc story. It's a terrific story about how they utilize and really it's a system of distribution, right? It's not an industry. It's really a choice. It's a way a company chooses to grow itself, through franchising versus to have, company stores.
Right.
So after the expansion, the fast expansion of McDonald's back in those days, it probably hit its height in the 70s, when there were so many brands out there using franchising, but it wasn't regulated.
Right.
It wasn't regulated, so people were getting, into situations that weren't safe for them. There were lots of folks that were just, not with the best intentions. And so it had a bad rap for quite a while, but the government got involved. The FTC actually today regulates franchising, and it's very much a transparent situation where you don't get hoodwinked at all. Everything you need is very, very available, so long as you know where to go to hunt down the information you want. And there's lots of laws that protect the small business owner, as well as laws that protect the franchisor. So over the years, because of the regulation and really how successful franchising, is shown to be, today there are over 3,300 brands franchised in the United States.
Wow. About
400 new companies choose franchising as a way to scale every year. And about every 8 minutes, another franchise operation opens up in the U.S.
Wow.
So it is absolutely a very, very vibrant, dynamic, we call it industry, but it's a very dynamic place to be working in.
Well, that's great insight. I'm always interested to hear the backstory of these types of things so that everybody gets a bit of a scope on what this actually is, how hard it is to get into. And I often think about business systems. Now, when I hark back to the early days of the McDonald's industry, as a whole, they talk a lot about systems. How do systems have an impact on franchising?
Well, franchising is really nothing but duplicating systems. And the actual terminology is business format franchising. That's really what it's called. The franchising that we're into is called business format franchising, because what's happening as a business chooses to franchise is, there's only one best way to do everything, right? There's one absolute best way. So if a business can figure out the one best way to do everything, it can package those systems up. It can put a brand and a trademark around that. It could then go duplicate itself, and the customer can expect the same quality service because the standards are met wherever they go, which in long term builds brand loyalty and builds brand equity. So it's really all about the business systems. And, when people ask me about franchising their own business, that's a long conversation, how that all happens. But the first thing I tell them is, to save yourself 6 figures minimally, what you want to do in your business is begin today to document everything you do. How do you put the key in the door to open the store? How do you answer the phone? Every single, activity ends up somewhere in a manual for the franchise owner to follow, because that's what they're buying into, is the proven system.
Yeah, wow. And I'm big on systems because I know that it makes running our business easier, especially if you're having to get in other people to work for your franchise. I suspect that makes it easier for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at your site here and I think to myself, the first thing comes to mind. I'm putting myself as a bit of a case study. I think to myself, I want to start a business. I have no idea about how to run a business. What are the barriers of entry to someone like me?
You want to start a business, you have no idea how to run a business, so you're the perfect client for me to work with. That's the first piece of it. And so franchising offers a way for anyone who's got the desire, they've got the entrepreneurial spirit, they've got the risk tolerance, and they have they don't need a whole lot of money, because much of it's financeable, but they have the ability to risk a certain amount of money. Regardless of their background, franchising offers the opportunity to get into a business of your own and to be successful. And the reason is your last question. It's because in franchising, it's often said that the systems run the business, the people run the systems, you run the people. So if you have the ability to manage a staff, to find good talent, and to motivate and create a culture, they're then trained to execute on the systems which actually are in place that run that business. So it's really a game of executing on a proven model. And really, I don't want to say anyone can do that, but it's been proven time and time again that, we could duplicate results regardless of where these people come from if they can execute on the proven system. So I wouldn't be concerned about someone who doesn't have that level of business experience. We work with people who are stay-at-home moms who get into business, teachers, nurses, let's say, as well as corporate executives who, have 3 assistants, and they've never really, it's been a long time, I should say, since they've been on the ground level actually, doing that kind of work.
You mentioned risk before, and I guess an appetite for risk. If you're risk adverse, is there a way that the franchise advisor can help people select a franchise that's appropriate for their risk profile?
So we get into that, right? One of the first things that we do with someone who's curious is we create a model. And that model, see, most people, let me, excuse me, back up for a minute.
Yep.
Most people, if they're interested, start opening up a magazine or going online or go to a trade show, and they start looking at two things. What do I know and what am I good at? So I know, engineering, so I'll look at those types of businesses, or I know health, so I'll look at, health, or I know accounting, I'll look at tax franchises. And what do I like? And I'm into fitness, so I'll look at fitness. Well, that's a very unscientific approach, and it's a very narrow approach. That's the first piece of it, is that it creates a narrow window to look at this dynamic industry, through. So we want to take one step back, and the first thing we want to do is create sort of your own profile, your own business model. So for example, what are the characteristics Rick needs in a business for him to find it investable? Let's forget about the category, the sector, forget about what the business does. Let's look at the business characteristics. For example, like you want to work 9 to 5. You don't want something that's going to be open, 12 hours a day. You like, white collar workers. You don't want to manage blue collar workers. And we go on and on through all the different, aspects of a business. And then we look at you and we look at your background, your interest level, and your risk profile. Yep. And all together, what we then have is a picture. And if that business model could exist, you would probably invest in that business. So then it's up to me to go out and look over 30 or 40 categories that franchising is flourishing in and find the businesses that match up, right, to this ideal, this perfect business that we kind of made up.
Yeah. 30 or 40 categories, that's massive.
Yeah, there's a lot of categories. And, part of our work together would be to go through those categories and to find out, do you like any of these? Are you open? You never thought of it, but are you open to looking? Would you hate this? Right? Do you have an uncle who's maybe had a bad experience in that? Like, what's the, do you have prejudices or preconceived ideas about a certain category? We could talk about the truth of those categories. And then we have a really nice model to go shopping against.
Yeah, that's great insight. I wonder, if I was to get into franchising, am I my own boss, or do I actually have to report to someone else as a franchisee?
So you are your own boss. You own 100% of your business, and someday you're going to sell that business. So you're the top of the food chain. What you do have, however, are brand standards. Right. So the business has to operate in compliance to these brand standards, and the franchisor, the parent company, will send field representatives, field people out to the locations to help you and to make sure that you're executing, according to keeping the brand intact. Right. So some people might feel that that's a little bit of a big brother, but it's all for everyone's good, because, again, when people can have a duplicatable experience, it builds brand loyalty and it builds equity in your business, equity in your brand. So it's all for the best.
I see some benefit in that, given, again, using myself as a fictitious case study. I see some benefit because I know nothing, and having that sort of support is almost like a mentorship role.
It is. And, in good franchising, what you hear, I played that role for many years in my early days. In franchising, I was a field person for a variety of brands. And what I learned was that my focus needed to be on both the revenue growth for that unit as well as the profitability. So sure, you have to do your compliance checks, but most people are good operators. They want to do it right. Yeah. And then we would work on, building revenue, building a customer base, and also looking at profitability, looking at P&Ls, looking at controlling costs, those kinds of things. So the franchisor offers an awful lot beyond brand compliance. That's sort of where it begins.
If we can, I wouldn't mind swinging back to something we touched on very, very early in terms of financing a franchise? How can we go about that if we don't have, I don't know what sort of capital outlay you would need for something like this? How do we find the funds to start?
So there's lots and lots of money out there for franchise businesses. The banks love franchising because it is predictable. Instead of your own, Joe's Sports Shop, you go and you purchase a, Play It Again Sports from a reputable franchisor who's got 300 locations, and they know the potential revenue, they know the numbers. They have financed them before, again and again.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to get SBA funding, Small Business Administration backed funding out of the banks. A lot of people also use home equity line of credit. They also there's a wonderful program which is very, very popular where you could actually use money out of your 401k, roll it over with no taxes and no penalty to start your own business.
Yeah.
So a combination of those, plus savings and stuff, that's kind of how people generally tend to do it. And usually you need 20% of the whole project cost to get started, right? So a $200,000 retail, franchise is going to cost you out of your pocket $40,000 with the rest financed.
Yeah, and I suspect you would take it very seriously once you've made that commitment. To get that,
absolutely.
That early momentum. I often talk about the importance of mindset for entrepreneurs. How important is mindset when getting into the franchise space?
There's always these conversations within our community. Is the franchisor looking for an entrepreneur or a pseudo-entrepreneur? Isn't the real entrepreneur the franchisor, the guy who started from scratch? And, isn't a franchisee somebody who didn't do that, so they're more of a pseudo-entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And, what I've learned is this. There are so many types of franchises out there, and there are so many ways you can do this. You can do this in a very, very large way where you can make 6- and 7-figure net numbers out of your enterprise. You could do it in a small way, like buy yourself a job and everything in between. That there isn't really one particular personality style. I think the mindset needs to be someone who is open-minded, because regardless of how successful they've been in the past, they're embarking on something brand new. Yeah. And they're going to be indoctrinated through training programs into a new system. So that's the first, I think, characteristic, is to be open-minded and flexible, and resilient when it comes to kind of change and all that. And then the second mindset, I think, has to do with burn the boats, right? So did you ever hear that phrase, burn the boats?
You can't go backwards then, can you?
Yes, you cannot go backwards, right? The settlers burned the boats when they came to America, so they couldn't go back. I know for myself, when I got into my own practice, I had that on my desk for many years. It's really like that, that I'm going to do everything I need to do to make this work, because there isn't a way backward. No. We're going to build it. We're going to grow it. We're going to hang with the winners, and we're going to learn best practices and execute them the best we can. So it's really that kind of mentality that separates the average performers from the high performers, I think.
I think to myself, the one thing I keep thinking about is this whole ability to be supported through this whole experience as this person who's a little bit unsure, a little bit lacking in confidence. I've got the money to do this. I really want to do this, but again, I can't stress how important it is to have that level of mentorship and guidance and standards already in place for you. I don't think it could be much easier. It's just now a matter of selecting the right business for you. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. If a business is going to fail, it's going to happen in the first 2 years. And franchisors know this. And for the good ones, they over support and they over mentor, the franchise to get it launched. And they're constantly revisiting their best practices and revising them, that launch time frame, like that $0 to first dollar time frame, so that they just get better and better at that, because that's the scariest part for anybody, right? It's the beginning of something.
I'm looking at the franchise advisor, which will make all of the links available below this call. Tell us a little bit about the International Franchise Expo.
That's the IFE. That's the largest show in the world, the one in New York.
Yep.
This year, I'll be doing 5 workshops at that event. We'll do one on what's trending in franchising, another one on what's right for me. Will this franchise succeed? Yeah, so all these neat topics we'll be doing throughout the 3-day event. That's every year, and that's held at the Javits Center in New York. There are probably 500 franchisors represented there, and all 3 days is filled with seminars and workshops. It's terrific.
I wonder, given the nature of franchising, you've got obviously an international franchise expo. If I'm offshore to your location, can you still help me?
So some franchisors, parent company, right? They choose to develop where they started. So if it's a Canadian franchise, that's where they're going to develop first, then go to the States. They might develop all of the states before they go overseas. While some other franchises might, franchisors, they might look to overseas early in their development. So I personally work in the United States. Now, the group that I'm affiliated with, we have folks in Canada, in India, and other places in the world that are helping both the franchisors go out that way and helping individuals, find opportunities.
For anybody who's listening to this call, there's a lot more content in this field, and to condense it into this call, we're probably not going to be able to do that. But what I would suggest is to reach out and touch base with Mariel. Where can they find you, Mariel?
So I think the easiest way to get to know me is to go to the site. That's the franchiseadvisor.com. And that's ADVISOR. Some people spell it with an E, but it's OR.com. Or you can call me anytime, and my direct line is 732-298-0900, and I'm always up for a conversation about franchising.
Well, there you go, everyone who is listening to the My Future Business call today. There are some gold nuggets in that call. Go over it again, and you'll learn something more every time you listen to the call. Reach out to Mariel, and Mariel, thanks very much for being on the My Future Business show today.
Thank you, Rick. Have a great evening.
It's been fun having you on the call with us today. Now click on that big red subscribe button and make sure you leave us a comment, share us with your friends, and join the growing list of leading entrepreneurs who have enjoyed their time on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews.